Hello, Dennis. Hello.
Yeah.
Yep. Good to have you, Dennis. We're waiting for Tosin to connect fully, so we know like everyone is live. How is it going on your end, though?
Very fine. It's been an interesting update across the country.
Yes.
But yes, it's been an interesting one. Everybody's anticipating what the outcome will be.
Right. Welcome, Tosin. I was just chatting to Dennis to sort of find out what the outcome and progress is so far on his end. He's in our situation room, right in Nigeria. How are you doing, Tosin?
I'm fine. I'm doing well. I'm good.
Okay, good, great. So just to say, I'm not live yet. So this is just a backend for the three of us. So if you're ready, I'll transmit it live. So essentially, I'll be asking. This is going to be like a pit between you two. So I'll be asking Dennis some questions around situation on the ground, especially with results. We've seen some of the updates so far since morning. The key thing being, election materials and arriving late in key places. Secondly, we've also seen issues of insecurity. Those are very critical points. But I think now we really want to talk about what the voting trend is like. It's probably too early to predict, but we want to see, both what's going on the field. And I'll be getting Tosin to comment on that as well. So if you are both good, I'll just transmit live now.
So let me just say that for results from my end,
yeah,
we don't have anything yet because we want local government results, not PU results.
Up to you level.
So we don't have any of those data to it's up to that level yet. So
yeah, no, that's fine. I understand. Yeah. Hey, sorry, I'm just trying to do administrative backend things. Okay, we're live now. Thank you once again for joining us, our viewers. This evening we're bringing you again election commentary, live commentary on what's happening so far on the field. Thank you to those who have joined us today. It's been a very interesting election, and I must say it's actually one that's been good for our democracy. So far, we've been able to see that people are motivated. There's a sense of ownership in the election from Nigerians, which is what we really want. But just to say again, despite that, we've seen a couple of glitches as well, and it's very important that it's not just all positive, right? That we sort of highlight these things to Nigerians. So let's kick off, right? Dennis, you are on the field, at least in our situation room. What do you make of this situation so far? How has it been? How would you judge from, I would say, composure generally, citizens' composure, but also on the administrative side? How would you judge that?
So I lost the most part of people. If you're asking for a general updates,
right.
Is that what you said?
Yes, general updates. I think that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, so I think I will start on a positive note first by saying that Nigerians are standing on their ground to ensure that their votes count. And from the reports we've gotten from different places, they are more like now the ones who are sending information as updating others. I mean, across the globe, what is happening at various polling units.
Right.
We've seen different tweets from different people, verified claims that giving reports of what is happening at polling units. So first, I would say that Nigerians are really, really, really interested in this election. I've never seen this before. I don't know for Tosin, but for me, I don't think I've ever seen this before. So that's that. However, of course, there are negative reports across the country. And like you mentioned some of them before, issues of we've seen issues of vote buying, like in Kaduna State, for instance. Some of the people I spoke with, they complained about vote buying. Of course, again, late arrival of material. As late as 5 p.m., somebody messaged asking where they can locate their polling units, to tell you that some people don't know their polling units, right? So challenge locating polling units. that is there, and that could be because INEC probably reassigned people to different polling units. So some people did not get to vote because the last formation they had is no longer correct as of today. Then, of course, general late arrival of materials. I think from the report we just did not too long, we saw that as at 9:30 a.m., only 41% of about 1,416 polling units that were sampled were open as at 9:30 a.m. Right? Then in the northeast, we have just 42% of those polling units that were open. Also in the northwest. Then in the southeast, we have very poor report from there. Arrival of materials, commencement of voting, only 10% of it started as at 9:30. Then in the south, just 29%. Then in the southwest, we have about 63% that commenced voting as of 9:30 a.m. So we have
sorry to cut you there. So might there be some implications for if logistics in terms of timing sort of differs by zone, and of course one would expect it to be substantially different also by state. Does that have implication for certain candidates, or in the bigger scheme of things, would that matter at all?
Oh, yeah, of course, yes. So the thing is, we cannot rule out the issue of regionalism in politics, right? Especially in Nigerian context. Right. Interestingly, we have candidates across different regions. This candidate from the southwest, from the southeast, and from the northern part of the country. Two candidates, two leading candidates, as I will put them. So in the southeast, we have late arrival of materials. We can't say the reason. But of course, that has implication for the candidates who perceive that region as a strong good, right? Like I said, we can't tell the reasons, but people are already making comment that is deliberate and all of that. But it's a poor reporting. Right.
Let's go to Tosin on that, because I really want to hammer on what the political implication of this might be. And I think in the morning, early in the afternoon, I was speaking to Victor, and we're sort of thinking around this, whether the citizens would be able to believe that this is just an honest coincidence, that states where certain unpopular candidates, quite referred to as the third force, seems to have good stronghold, which is the South. We're seeing very poor performance. Do you think that matters at all, even if not for the candidates, for the way our electoral administration is in terms of credibility?
So I lost the most part of it. My network is bad over here.
You're muted.
Sorry, I didn't get the last part, Ayantola.
So I think my last part is that I was just trying to pause Dennis thoughts a little bit and go to you. What does that mean? That even if it doesn't have actual impact, because almost everywhere, it's not just a thing peculiar to, let's say, the Southeast. Almost everywhere we're seeing instances of INEC staff arriving late. But the peculiarity of what you have in some states, for instance, in the Southeast, which is perceived to be the stronghold of a third force, so to say. Do you think citizens would just think this is a coincidence, or could actually be reinterpreted as a strategic, whether it's a strategic positioning on the part of INEC to sort of disadvantage a candidate?
Well, thanks, Nicola. I would prefer that we do not see it from that lens. Of course, there are people who would have gone ahead with that kind of perception. Right. But if we look at it critically across history, you see that one of the issues that has plagued Nigerian election for some time is these logistical challenges that in terms of planning and delivering materials to locations. If you look at the last election, presidential election, we had the one before that and the one prior to that. Right. And one of the major issues that I noticed, because I've been going through so many social commentaries being run across the national TV station and looking at some of the things that the INEC officials that were interviewed and some of the voters also spoke about, you'd see that most of the materials are transported by road. And this can be a slow and unreliable means of delivery. And in some cases, for instance, I read about Niger State, where there were reports that some polling units did not even receive the necessary materials at all. I just recently saw on Channels TV somewhere in Alaba Market that, of course, where you would describe to be a kind of poll unit where the presidential candidates of the Labour Party would have its stronghold. They were like, were supposed to have two beavers there,
right,
a beavers machine, and only one was brought. And that one wasn't even working very well. And they said we'll come back after 4 hours, and they were never seen again. And I think some hours later, some people tried to come to steal that one beavers that was still working partially. But if you look at it across beyond Alaba Market in Lagos State, if you go to the northern part of the country, you would also see that there were issues like that where either materials didn't get there early, or you have voters who have been on the line for a long time, only for them to discover that INEC officials have not arrived, or they arrive and they leave early. But I think it is more about logistical challenges rather than just targeting of areas, because there were certain places in Ekiti State where issues like that happened. There were certain places in Abeokuta where we had some of those issues, and even in those states. So, I mean, it's across. But I think the solution would be that, for me, that INEC should find a way to partner with, even if it doesn't trust the commercial airlines and stuff, could partner with the Air Force to get this material to the nearest base. Of course, there will still be an issue of this issue of how do you get it from the Air Force base or nearest base of to the interlands where these materials are really needed. Because if you look at some of the hotspots where some of these issues are happening, there are either places that are far off from the city center, or some places in the city center where you have lots of voters, actually, not even where you find 30, 40 registered voters, like 100, 200, 300, and so forth. But I think the other issue would be this cash scarcity in the country. And if you notice, Ayantola and Dennis, prior to the election, there's been this observation raised that some of the people who INEC used to engage to transport these materials require to be paid upfront rather than payments later. It's always about this trust issue. If you carry the materials and you take it to the center, there could be disparity in who pays what and not, or when such payments arrive. So in that context, the new Naira design policy could also be a factor in terms of why or not some of these vendors or transporters decided not to or delayed in delivering these materials. But I think beyond also this delay of materials thing, I think there's this conversation regarding even where INEC officials were present, you could notice that accreditation was smooth in some areas, and you could also notice where BVAS was a bit maybe malfunctioning in certain areas. I think, for instance, they were experienced delays in Abeokuta. You also have something like that in the Magodo area in Lagos. But one thing that I observed from today's election, across what was reported on multiple national TV stations, would be that there's this significant improvement in terms of how the voting was conducted, but there are still much bigger issues in terms of logistics, in terms of the conduct of the officials themselves. For instance, why would you be late to the polling units? And Ayantola, you'd see that when we talk about citizenry apathy during electioneering process or coming out to vote on election day, imagine someone who has to travel from afar to a polling unit that is far off from his or her place of residence, and you get there, you've been there since 6:30 and up to 11, you've not seen any INEC official. If someone comes again to tell you to come out next election, would you go out? So those are part of the factors that are demoralizing. They are demoralizing, demotivating factors, and which INEC and INEC has to find a way to resolve in terms of that. But so far so good. The conduct has been good. It's just about certain areas in Lagos, certain areas in Imo, and a few other places Of course, some people will still raise observation. Why are all these things happening in the south?
Yeah.
And you have low cases of that in the north.
Maybe there's a sense of poor reportage as well. But
yeah.
Sorry to cut you, Dennis. Could you come again on those stats in terms of? I think you were giving us some statistics in terms of what's coming out of the field, percentage of places where we have like late arrivals. So our audience could catch that. I think you're muted. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very well, very well.
Yeah, so with some the results I gave it that was on about 1,416 polling units that were sampled.
Right.
Like I said, about as at 9:30, only 41% of this sample population were opened. Then across the regions, I'll go over it again. In the northeast, we have 42%, which were open as at 9:30 a.m. I know polling units and voting commence at 8:30 or thereabout. Then in the northwest, the same 42%. In the southeast, where we have the lowest 10%. Then in the south, we have 29%. Then in the southwest, we have 3%.
63.
Yes, 3%.
I didn't get that. You said 63.
Yes, 3%.
Wow,
yes.
that's quite high for the southwest, really. Do we have anything from north? I didn't get north central from you.
Oh, not central, 45%.
But and just for our audience to be sure how this works, this is not all the polling units. There are about 100,000 polling units in Nigeria. But again, of course, this is how sampling works, right? It's supposed to represent the entire, population. So again, we can have a fair, at least assumption that this is how things work in every other polling unit. And it just sort of baffles me. Let's zone in a little bit on that 63% in the Southwest. What could be happening? Because I would imagine logistics is a universal theme. So why are INEC staff able to start, very early in these regions and not in some other places? And then if we look at the disparity between the figures, Southeast, we are seeing 10%. I would want to assume, just following Dr. Tosin, that this is a logistics issue. But how do we make citizens confident that this is not anything political? I mean, especially looking at the huge disparity between the figures. And this is to any of you. So the issue now is moving beyond the assumption that it's political or not, but how do we ensure citizens really trust this system moving forward? Because I imagine a lot of people are unable to vote today due to that, and so we have this sense of dissatisfaction moving forward.
Well, it's hard not to actually remove politics from this, right? It's hard at this point to say there's no political undertone or element to it. I mean, even if we don't say it, that's what the ordinary person on the streets would say about this, right? But again, we also know that Lagos State, the Southwest, they have different, the different structure entirely, right? For instance, in Lagos State, it's actually easy to connect in those regions. I mean, that's the region I've lived, so I could speak to that. But I don't know the reason why it's that low for the Southeast. Maybe Tosin will have a comment on that. But generally, the comment everybody said is that, oh, this is intentional, this is deliberate. And again, like we said, people are seeing it like a ploy, like a deliberate attempt to weaken the stronghold of the candidates from the Southeast. I mean, there's a candidate from the Southeast region. So it's actually hard to say that there's no political undertone to it. But we want to believe that INEC will provide a good explanation to this.
Right. Tosin, do you have anything to say on that?
So looking at those figures, you may start to think that, of course, even if you don't want to look at it from the political end, you may start to want to readjust your position regarding that. Why 10% in the Southeast? Why these other figures somewhere else? And these are questions that should be asked. We may want to look at the security angle to it, but then the security aspect has been beefed up following the killing of the Enugu senatorial candidate of the Labour Party. And so you would expect, for instance, earlier this morning on Channels TV, the EFCC officials, alongside some military personnel, were at the polling unit of the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. And according to them, they were there to ascertain that, whether materials have arrived, whether people have arrived. The EFCC chairman was asked that why are EFCC personnel asking questions regarding material movement. I think their own jurisdiction or engagement should be about preventing vote buying and voters inducement and so on. But his clarification was that security operatives were working hand in hand to ensure that there wasn't and this and that and stuff. But still in Anambra, you still witness that there were multiple areas where, it's going beyond what exactly is going on, beyond the logistic issue, beyond, is it delivery materials or why are INEC officials late, unusually late and stuff. So the political angle can be looked at, that is this targeted? That's a question that we have to look at. The other angle could be, is it a security aspect? For a bit of years now, we've been seeing this sit-at-home thing going on in the Southeast, and there's this fear factor which you cannot remove.
Right.
Could there be political undertone? Yes, there could be political undertone, but there's also that security factor towards that one. And you've seen reports of where INEC offices and have been burnt down. And what it does, it's not just about the building, it's not just about the structure, it's about the fear, the trauma that this sends across the personnel of INEC in southeastern eastern states. But 10% from the sampling is so low.
Yeah, it's quite worrisome.
The political side to it because some people also raise questions that why do we have earlier this morning, why were EFCC operatives at the polling unit of the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, and they weren't at the polling unit of the presidential candidate of the APC, or in Yola, the polling unit of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party? There were questions around that. Why? But the EFCC chairman said that, some of the work that EFCC personnel does, some of the work that they do is to prevent much more than the prosecution or arrest that they make. But when you look at the figures that Dennis provided, I think it's worth looking at the political undertone to that. But it's also important that we also look at the security aspects of that, things that have happened before today's election.
Right.
Burning down on INEC offices, attack on INEC personnel, the sit-at-home crisis that has been going on in the southeastern states. And it's more about fear. It's a psychological thing rather than the physical impact of these things. And once, for instance, elections are supposed to be held, INEC officials are supposed to go to certain hotspots, then you have questions around whether there's that confidence from the leadership of the INEC, whether there has been confidence in terms of rebuilding confidence of these officials or not over time. That's another aspect that we should look at beyond just the political undertone, which is the default thing. Once such sampling and such result comes up, you want to look at the political side, but also the security and psychological impact of the prior issues need to be analyzed as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Dennis, I wonder if there's any other interesting update from the field that we might need to be aware of before I move to some of the questions I've prepared.
I think from my end, I would say that we had reports of insufficient sensitive materials in some quarters. There was a report of PWDs not being assisted to in their polling units. Then we also have reports of some, of course, beavers not authenticating either the fingerprints and features of voters. That's not issues generally. Then, of course, the security issues we've seen largely in Lagos. We've also seen the reports of we've also had reports of people being denied the right to vote in Rivers State and all of that. So that's not issues that we have at the moment.
Okay. I'd imagine these issues are not quite peculiar to 2023. These have always been the issues, like Tosin said when we started. It's something that's perennial in Nigerian elections, so it will always happen. But let's talk about insecurity, right? So just looking at the dashboard by Human Angle now, so they have an insecurity tracker or election security tracker where they sort of track incidences or instances of election malpractice and violence. And so this tracks the election by, cities. So right now, I'm looking at the data, and there have been instances or outbursts in 20 different locations in the country. What that means is that, more than 20 incidences, of course, but then in 20 different locations. So like in Lagos today, we were seeing protests in Ikate, in Elegushi, in Surulere, we're seeing parts of Lagos Island being disrupted. Now, what does that tell us in terms of the democratic state of Nigeria? And I would imagine that a lot of people earlier today have said that I think the hopes are high. I think citizens really believe that this is the time where democracy is being consolidated. But then if you look at it as well, the people going on the street to disrupt voting, the people going to cut ballot boxes away are not politicians. These are citizens. What does that tell us about the readiness of the citizens? And this goes to any of you who is, ready to jump on that. So do we really think citizens are ready for a democratically clean election? Maybe I'll push that to Tosin first.
First, citizens are always ready for democratic action. The question should be more like, why are we witnessing in certain areas improvements in turnout of voters, and in certain areas you're seeing low turnout of voters? For instance, in Kaduna, the Kaduna state governor expressed his dissatisfaction with the turnout of voters. And traditionally, you would see that Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, and all those places, even in Borno State, where that has been ravaged heavily by terrorism in time past, in previous election, witnessed high turnout. That to a large extent, a lot of people were shocked. Compared to some states that has relative peace. Yeah. But now, in today's election, you can see that in some areas that you would usually have high turnout of voters. For instance, I saw a particular polling unit with registered voters of over 200 people, and I think the accredited voters were not even up to 60. And yes, and you could see in certain places that something regarding the security issue and these electoral malpractices that you just spoke about, people are kind of like targeting beavers. And this issue was raised to in front of the INEC chairman this afternoon about what he's going to do about that. People are snatching not just the ballot boxes and destroying it, but also going after the beavers. Because, with beavers, you can, the new electoral act has made it easier that it's not about the registered voters, it's more about the accredited voters. But what happens when beavers is stolen, and the whole process is done, and you want to review certain things, for instance, in the court of law, where's the evidence? Where's even the machine to even, and stuff like that? But I think one of the things that need to be addressed is beyond just the whole conversation regarding these electoral malpractices that we've always seen. Of course, it has reduced to a point, but it looks like it's evolving now, because if beavers is targeted, the ballot boxes are still being snatched in 2023. This is something that used to happen early 2000 and 2005, 7, 2003, and people used to talk about and all, and it's still happening now. Then maybe it's time we start talking about why don't we push for the electronic voting of the thing. I know there are a lot of reservation regarding whether the country has enough security infrastructure, cyber security infrastructure, internet infrastructure to be able to enable this process. But electronic voting has the potential to speed up the voting process. For instance, you can't even go and, if you want to go and snatch you can't snatch the machine once you voted. That's all. It's already transmitted and relayed. Reduces delays. It is more accurate, more transparent, and it would also prevent this issue of vote buying, voters inducement, ballot box snatching. Because how do you show your ballot paper to someone to say, "Oh, come and vote, I voted for this candidate, so give me the cash afterwards"? And it also it would reduce the number of people going after all these systems, because it looks like we are really avoiding the major fundamental issue, which is electronic voting. People should be able to vote electronically. And the more we try to, there's this way when it comes to amending certain things, or they'll say pull down the entire house and rebuild it again. But instead of us doing that, we try to patch this and patch that. But we'll still continue to confront this issue once we still have to employ this paper thing, these people gathering, and you have to accredit with something and going and forth and that. But I think the other thing regarding these malpractices, which also helps people get away with it, is we don't really have, yes, there has been improvement in terms of ensuring that we have more polling units, but we still have, for instance, you get to a place where there's a lot of people in that polling unit and you have to travel from far distances. So for those who analyze election, because every politician running for office would analyze strategic points, they know where they can win. And they know, oh, in this location, there's one polling unit that has over 2,000 people. I'm just saying, for instance, 2,000 people, 1,000 people, 500 people. And they know, okay, so it's easy to disrupt that. It's different from when you have those number of people scattered in different polling units. It becomes more work to do that. But it becomes easier if you just disrupt one place, then 1,000 votes is done. So these are some of the issues that need to be addressed, and I think we need to look for more innovative solutions like electronic voting, or else we still keep on dealing with the same issue. People coming around and
So I mean, I think our time is almost fast spent, but I want us to discuss the possible scenarios that could end up today. Dennis, what's the worst case scenario that could happen today? Let's imagine there's a runoff, which could happen. Do you think INEC is prepared? And do you think the political climate is prepared to receive that well? Because I mean, the issue here is that maybe citizens are not quite aware. Whoever wins has to win the highest number of votes, but also has to win 25% in 24 states, which is quite a difficult one, looking at how things are going.
Yes, like you said, you asked if INEC is prepared. I mean, the last information I had, INEC is prepared for even a runoff. I'm even interested to know that before now, INEC has always been prepared for a runoff. I think even as late as last year, they say that they are prepared for a possible runoff election. And with what we are seeing today, we can't rule out the possibility of a runoff election, right? You mentioned, the requirement is you have to win majority votes and 25% into top states and the FCT, right? So you have to meet this. You don't meet these requirements, you cannot be declared a president. And if things don't go, if you don't have a clear winner in the first phase, of course, it's runoff that you go to. That's why it's important for citizens to know that whatever the outcome of the first leg is, if you end at that point, fine. If it goes to runoff, they should understand that it is a law. It is not something the Electoral Commission created either to favor or disfavor the political party. But yes, the probability of runoff is high. We can't rule that out at the moment. We know, we've looked at the number several times, and we see that it's almost impossible for any of the candidates at the moment to meet that requirement, right? But again, it's politics. 2 hours is enough for everything to change the politics, right? So I think that's it on that. If the institutions are ready, well, I don't think we have a choice. You can't break the law because you want to have your way. The law is the law. You have to meet that threshold. If you don't meet that threshold, INEC is mandated by the Electoral Act and the Constitution to conduct a runoff election.
Right. Lucy, I wouldn't know if you have anything to say on that.
Well, first, we would not, a winner with only 50.5%. I don't think that is even likely. I don't think that is likely in this election, because fair enough, as much as people would say that the Labour Party presidential candidate does not have the structure across the country to pull off something or a surprise, because of the timing, because of the current politics and all. But we should expect a good fight. Something unusual with the the alternative this time around.
Right.
But it's filled with so much uncertainty. And one of the things that I will speak about is that rather than this winner takes all model, there is likely a need for us to have, I think, what would work best. I mean, in terms of preventing post-election violence, because that's even what a lot of people are much more concerned about right now, is perhaps maybe a national unity government, with a consensus-driven agenda reform, that cuts across all parties, not just winning election with 50-point-something%, and you say, oh, we've won it, we are the winner now. Everybody can go and do everything they want. Other people can go and do what they want to do, because I don't think that speaks to the spread across the country compared to running an inclusive, consensus-driven government at the end of the day. And the other challenge in the next 48 hours, as much as a lot of people may be so much happy with certain results coming up in certain areas now, the critical point is now from the polling unit. I know Dennis, Ayantola, you're familiar with this. From the polling unit now to the ward level, to the local government level, to the state level, that is where the magic happens. Of course, Beavers might have limited that, magic miracle that is, no, I won't call it miracle, some kind of, magic that happens.
Turn around.
But a lot of things can happen even after you've counted and all. But Beavers as to a large extent, because you can't, for instance, you look at the tribunal case in Osun State, has shown that it becomes very difficult for you to get away with that, but you can't still overrule many things. So what we would be talking about now is that there has to be effective communication between electoral supervisors and voters, clear and concise communication across board to tackle misinformation and misunderstanding and post-election violence, as materials are being moved from the polling unit to ward to all those areas. Security agencies need to provide good protection to the INEC officials, to ad hoc staff like NYC core members, and to officials even at the collation center, so that miscreants that have been targeting Beavers and targeting ballot boxes and scaring people up and down in certain areas would not be able to access that. But in terms of the turnout, the outcome of the election, we'll wait till tomorrow, But a lot of things, there's so much uncertainty. You can't say, is this person that would win? Of course, you could argue in terms of, for instance, Dennis sampling and Dataphyte, data and information, and say, perhaps it will be between Atiku and Tinubu, but you can't still even say which out of the two. You can't totally rule out the third person. It's perhaps the most, this is perhaps in a long time the most highly contested election we've seen in a while, and this hasn't happened in a long time. You've always seen two front runners ever since, but now you're having three, and that's good for democracy.
Absolutely. Dennis, just before we wrap up, it looks like you're itching to say something.
I think I just want to echo what Tosin just said. To be honest, at this point, everything looks bleak. You can't say who is leading or who would eventually emerge the winner, because we still have results at the micro level, very level, which is the polling unit. And from there, we move to what, like you said, then to local government. Then you start seeing the magic at the state level, right? Even for us, I think it's becoming very hard for us to predict, even with the numbers, what it will be, right? We've never seen this before. Unlike the past elections where we have two-man horse race, and we can say, oh, based on this voting pattern, based on all of the other factors, it's going to swing this way. But this time around, you see even analysts, they are not seeking for analysis from what I remember.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough one. Even I mean, INEC has really tried to encourage people not to, at this point, spread results, because that could also have potential impact on how people think about, voting. Because let's imagine some of these predictions that fly around based on what you have, and things turn out, INEC has the final say on results, even if the case seemingly is that, oh, your candidate is winning, and tomorrow INEC comes out and say, no, this is not what the votes look like. Just about, I think about 2 hours ago, the INEC chair closed the National Collation Center and said, okay, we're not coming back until the next 24 hours. Don't expect anything from us. So at least Nigerians still have the next 24 hours to be anxious. So let's see what happens between now and then. I'm sure I'll be bringing Tosin up again tomorrow. I think tomorrow. Then we'll have clear updates on results, clear updates on collation, and by then we would be able to say clearly, whether things are going for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu or Atiku Abubakar or Peter Obi. Till then, thanks everyone. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Tosi. See you again.
All right, Anthony. All right, Dennis. Thank you so much.
I think I would also see my opinion in favor of you know that you can't do that.
Jesus, I'm so sorry. I did not remember. Apologies to the NNPP supporters. I'm so sorry. That was an expensive oversight. Sorry. If apart, the reason why I said 3 us versus, in terms of the spread,
Yeah.
For instance, you recently just talked about how difficult it is to make predictions, but there are certain states that you could say, okay, this would most likely go for this person.
Correct.
In the Northeast, you could say this would most likely go for this person. Of course, predictions can be wrong. In Southwestern part, like Ekiti, Ondo, Oyo, and a few other, you could say something. In Anambra, Enugu, you could put, but in Kano, you could say something, but it's a bit. Yeah, so maybe 3 to 4 us, but I don't see the 4th us still being an us.
I mean, fair enough. Lots of those team as 4th are not with that much weight if you look at the 1st to 3rd.
Yeah, if you look at the first 3, yes.
Yeah. So, but let's see what happens tomorrow. We have 24 hours to be anxious, like I said. Thank you guys, and catch you again.
All right. Yep. Goodbye.
Yeah.